Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Present podcast. My name is Daniel Morgan. I'm joined here live by Poujix from Toronto. Hey there, my man. How's it going?
Life is brilliant, man. How are you?
I am doing terrific. I think right now I got a little bit of cold, and I'm pretty sure that Ali Mehdi, our guest, also has one. So, my man, buddy, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good now. But yeah, I got a cold, man. But that can't stop me, you know.
Awesome. Love the attitude, man. For how long you've been actually in this current condition?
I got it. I think it was like Monday night, so it's been almost less than a week.
And you've already recovered, right?
Almost. Just the coughs.
I get it, actually. Don't worry. This happens to all of us, basically. And, of course, we know Canada. It's been quite weird this year for all Canadians. I mean, Poujix, do you have any reason for that? Is it like part of the global warming thing that all Canadians now get cold?
I don't know if it's part of global warming.
It's like the Canadian new storm or something.
We're allergic to warm. We can't tolerate it. Whatever.
Wow, I think it's probably Donald Trump. Like, you guys have allergy to Donald Trump or something, probably. You all got something over there right now. I don't know exactly. What's the story? Probably after NAFTA. Yeah. That's like one of the curses after NAFTA or something. But for now, today's topic isn't about the NAFTA or Donald Trump. We're talking about how to enjoy spending time alone. And quite frankly, that's a very good point, because usually when we find ourselves alone, this oftentimes happens when we are sick. And right now, Ollie just caught a cold last week, and Poujix, you were actually not much better off about 2 weeks ago. You had the exact same condition. So for now, let's talk about spending time alone. Now, before we actually talk about how to make it worthwhile, let's just talk about how we actually spend our time alone. So first, you, Poujix, do you actually spend a lot of time alone?
I don't know it depends on your definition of a lot, but
wow, let's just go with numbers then. So how many hours per day are you alone by yourself?
I don't think it's actually that much. It's mostly at the end of my day, when I'm trying to decompress and basically calm down. I often eat my dinners alone at the end of the day, and that's about it. That's pretty much it. But there are some times that I electively go about actually taking some time off to reflect on some matters regarding myself or myself. And that's I'm assuming. So for example, when I'm studying at the library or whatever, on my own, I don't assume that to be an alone time, because I'm assuming when we're talking about alone time, we're talking about alone pastime. So pastime, but you don't have much to do, and then you're alone.
Interesting. So by that definition that you have, you're only alone when you're having dinner at night.
Mostly, and then some elective times that I want to reflect on matters.
Interesting. So, Ollie, how about you? How much time do you spend by yourself alone?
So yeah, like I think every day I would say maybe at least 1 to 2 hours just to kind of like just go away from all the distraction, or like just trying to like cut down the noise. I usually at nighttime. I guess that's the best time for me.
I gotta tell you guys something. I think the nighttime is the one time you don't want to be alone, guys. Come on, seriously, step up the game, man. Seriously. But anyways, of course, the fact of the matter is that we spend a lot of time alone, just me included. Although I prefer not to spend my nights alone. No pun intended, by the way. But still, let us talk a little about how we can actually enjoy. That's right. How we can actually enjoy this time spent alone. So, Poujix, do you actually enjoy spending time alone, or for you, it's like one of those things that you don't want to do and just happens and you just got to do it, right?
It's a good question. I don't want to spend a lot of time alone, so I don't want to, go to a cave or a jungle or something and be alone for long periods of time. That's not my cup of tea, although I know some people enjoy it, and that's fine. But for me, it's I'm a social person. I do like socializing, but at the same time, I do like to take some of my time off at certain points, as I was mentioning, to reflect on things with respect to myself. So I want to see so for example, the book I read, okay, how about that concept? I want to give it a further thought, and then, do some mind experiments, etc. So yeah, I do enjoy some alone time, even actively engaging in such alone times. But
quick question, Poujix. Are you a smoker?
Smoker?
That's
no.
right. Not at all.
But, no, not really.
Because usually, here's what I find quite weird. If somebody looks outside of the window of his house to reflect, they call them crazy. But if the same person smokes and looks outside of the window, they call him a fucking philosopher. I don't know why that's the case. It's just pretty weird. So in your case, you spend that time reflecting. And how do you exactly do that? Like you literally stare outside of the window or something, or you just sit there and think?
Sometimes it's actually, the staring thing, literally the staring thing. No, but mostly it's rather, I have, so in those reflecting moments, I usually have an internal conversation with myself, sometimes I actually talk out loud with myself.
Wow.
Because it helps me organize my thought.
Interesting.
It really does. Not always. It's sometimes I find it.
So you have like a monologue, basically, like these movie characters. You have like a monologue.
Sort of. Well, yeah, sort of.
So, Poujix, what do you think about today's conversation? Well, Poujix, I think today was a very good day. So, Poujix, another question. Is it a good? Of course, Poujix. It's very nice. So, like, that kind of thing, like, what was that? Two-Faced in Batman or something?
You could say that, actually. Sometimes it looks like that. It sounds like that. I mean, I know I'm coming up really crazy right now.
That's right. Actually, here's the fact. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having a monologue with yourself when you're alone in the car. It's quite normal. And actually in NLP, it is recommended to use that as a means of conditioning your mind for positivity. So generally when you're speaking, especially if you speak with a positive tone, this affects your mood and it allows you to clarify your head. So generally speaking, it's actually quite recommended by many psychologists for those who are usually quite confused to either write down their thoughts or to speak them out loud. So either way is good. Either you write them down or you speak out loud. They both allow you to clarify your thoughts, which is pretty good. It's quite normal. So don't worry. There's nothing wrong with you, Poujix. Everything's fine. And let's move on now to Ollie. So how about yourself? How do you spend your time alone exactly?
So before we, I guess we talk about the alone time, so there's a difference between alone and not doing like anything. And the other one is like when you're alone, but you're doing something, right?
That's right.
I think there's two distinctions, right? But for me, sometimes I do want to, I guess, like be alone. But at the same time, don't do anything a lot. Just like, I don't know, like this might sound
chill out or
really
something.
Weird,
chillax.
Sometimes you just want to sit down and then maybe look at the wall. I don't know, like if this is crazy or like whatnot. But for me, it kind of helps me kind of like rearrange my, I don't know, all the stuff I have in my head.
Wow.
It just makes me calm down or like it just makes me not do anything. But at the same time, it's really calming. It's sort of like a meditation.
Wow.
That's
meditation, like a wall meditation. You look at the walls and you meditate.
Yeah,
I'm right now imagining like a sanitarium with one room belonging to Poujix just looking out the window and just talking to himself.
Yeah.
And the other one, you're looking at the walls. But joke aside again, that's also very interesting. I've personally never had any wall meditation, quote unquote. But generally speaking, like you literally sit there in your room and you look and stare at the wall.
No, not just, no. So the wall is just an example. For example, you could be on your bed. And it could be looking at the ceiling.
Oh,
right?
so you have like a blank stare. You're all in your head, right?
Exactly.
Interesting.
So it's like a movie that's playing in your head.
So to all of our listeners, there's no such thing as a wall meditation. There's no need to actually look at the wall. You can just look at anything you want. That's right.
Well, I mean,
that's the idea of staring out of the window, right? You sometimes don't look at stuff. You just staring at something and thinking in your head.
But I think staring at the window is like a lot cooler, like cinematic and stuff, right? Like a fucking philosopher, like,
that's
what
true.
is the meaning of life?
But it's the same goddamn thing.
Exactly, that's right. It is like you are there physically, but your mind is in 1,000 places. Right. It's not there.
Exactly, right.
Very well.
That's true,
so you mentioned how you spend your time alone, but let me ask you this question. Do you actually enjoy spending time alone? First, you, Poujix.
Oh, yeah. I think I find it within the context that we just talked about organizing thought, I find it necessary. Whether I enjoy it or not, it's sort of irrelevant in my case, which I do actually enjoy it. But even if I don't, I feel like if I don't do it for a long periods of time, so say weeks gone by and I haven't tried to take a time off and think things through with myself and organize my thought, I feel like I will lose sight of the things that I want to achieve.
Very good.
It's like basically getting away from things that you're like the day-to-day activities and trying to look at it from a drone view, like a chopper view, satellite view. So you have an overall view of things that you basically reflect on, okay, I've started off that part of the world or my world, and then now I'm here, and this is where I'm going. Am I on the right path? Or something like that.
Interesting.
Not exactly, but yeah.
Wow, I love it. How about you, Ali? What do you think? Do you actually enjoy your time alone?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of similar to what Poujix said. You know, like I enjoy it because, you know, as long as there's a balance, like for example, you don't want to be spending, I guess, like 6 hours alone or like 8 hours alone. You know, like you want to spend the entire day. Like that's not something I want to do. But same time, it's just a balance between being alone and being with other people. But yeah, at the same time, I do enjoy, you know, I guess being alone. It's kind of like the same reasons, you know. It just gives you time to reflect back, and you know, at the same time, you know, like for me, what I do, I sort of like have goals and all that. So for example, I look at the day and I go, okay, you know, like today was pretty good, so I just look at all the goals that I had, things like that. It just gives you more time, I guess.
Wow, this is pretty amazing. And I know both of you guys, I know you're both bright minds. And long time ago, I heard that people become great not in public, but when you're alone, actually. So I really believe that the character is formed not when we're in public, but when we're alone. Because when you're alone, you have time to reflect, to think. Just assume like, let's say, computer science, right? So you need time to process the information that is given to the computer, right? The same thing happens to us as humans in that when we are alone and we actually take that time to reflect, not to waste it. Here's a problem these days, unfortunately, which I really abhor, and that is the prevalence of all sorts of distractions these days that prevent us from actually having some time to think. I mean, like, let's be honest. You yourself, Ali, you might be alone and you reflect. Maybe Poujix does this, but for a lot of us, we are just so much bombarded by all this texts and let's say, Angry Birds on our phones where we have no time to reflect at all. I mean, because of this very factor, I think a lot of us are getting dumber. I mean, they call the younger generation dumb. No, the younger generation is not dumb. Just they don't have the time to reflect on what they're learning, and they're just always distracted, which is why I'm specifically against texting for anything other than, you know, urgencies or like business reasons, because I really need that ability to focus on thinking and reflection for a long period of time. So I am all for the idea of having time to think and to reflect, because that's where character is shaped. That's when you think about your past successes and failures. Create for yourself a new plan. You reach new conclusions. And then that's when you decide. The keyword here is decision. You decide to change your behavior from now on. And all of this happens when you're alone, i.e., you do not change your character when you're with others. When you're with others, you are functioning on your last, ideologies, on your last belief system, on your last, let's call this mental programming. And then you receive the feedback, and then you act based upon that system. But if you want to use like a computer terminology here, we literally have to stop. I mean, you cannot run an application and edit it at the same time. Anybody who has a very dismal knowledge of computer science will know that if you want to run the software, you cannot decode it. You got to first stop running it, and then you should decode it and then run it again. I literally think of that time alone as that decoding process of computer programming, and that you literally allow yourself to rebuild your thoughts, to rebuild your mind, to create conclusions and to change yourself. And then you go back to society and run the new program that is far more enhanced and far more qualified. So with that being said, let us now talk about your feedback regarding this matter and how I tend to look at spending time alone from this geeky computer perspective. So Poujix, what is your perspective about this matter?
First of all, I think it was a very good analogy. I didn't think of it that way. Now I have a new perspective on the matter.
Wow. I just changed your programming right now. Got to be alone for 5 minutes to think about it and then come back.
Yeah, for a second I was like on pause, decoding, changing the code a little. Yeah.
Because actually, I'm an expert in NLP, by the way. If you don't know what NLP is, neuro-linguistic programming. So many of these things are actually described. For anybody who knows NLP, they understand this very well. But for those of us who do not know NLP, these might seem a little bit, because NLP is a combination of programming and neurolinguistics. So part of the computer science is actually involved and embedded in NLP.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was very interesting. Anyways,
yeah, you know, like, yeah, unless you use something like a debugger software, you can do that. You can run a software and you can stop in the middle. Come on, I'm just kidding.
That's right, exactly. Well, we're going way deep here right now about computer science, but I think our audience get the point.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, I was just
That's right. Very
but
well.
yeah. So the thing you mentioned, it's really good because what's been happening over the past, I don't know, like maybe 50 years, that every generation is having more free time. For example, if you look back, right? So people who used to work on the farms, right? So for example, they used to work maybe, I don't know, 14 hours, like 15, 16 hours a day. They did not have a chance to sort of like, like sit back or maybe reflect, right? But with our generation, we have so much free time, and then to consume that free time is where all the social media, all the content comes in. Like for example, you think that Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, you think those products are free? No, they're not, because you're giving them your time, which is really expensive.
And attention nowadays, as Gary says, is more valuable than money.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. So you may feel that all of these apps are free and all that, but at the same time, they make a lot of money. For example, if you spend 1 hour on Facebook, they probably make a lot of money on that. So,
exactly.
So I think at this day of age, I think it's really important to like kind of like step back and just go away from all the distraction that you have. And at the same time, like, so the other example is, for example, if you were waiting at a coffee shop, for let's say you're getting a tea, and then what happens is that, so before these smartphones, like, just imagine if you're stuck in the coffee shop. Let's say you have to wait 5 minutes. What would you do if you did not have a cell phone, right? So that's something you need to think about. Like now, what happens as soon as there's a 1 minute delay, people
boom,
take out
Facebook.
their phones.
That's right.
Exactly. They just go on it. So if you think about it, what did happen before smartphones? Like maybe people used to talk to each other, I guess.
Exactly.
But yeah,
good old days.
That's really tough topic.
They used to talk to each other, I guess. That was fun.
Oh my goodness. So that's so true. And Poujix, about this thing that Ollie mentioned about this excess free time that we have, but unfortunately at the same time, we are far more distracted than ever before. So I'm not against social media. I mean, I personally know how to use social media in a way that it enhances my life and business and not destroy it. But a lot of our listeners don't know it, and they don't even understand what just Ali mentioned about the fact that we are the products of Facebook and Twitter. We are not the users of that, actually. So, because other than what also Ali mentioned regarding the attention that we spend basically and we dedicate to social media, the other way that social media make money from its users is by sharing its data, the big data, for free. That is, they take the information from us, they never pay us anything, and then they share it with like big, let's say, perhaps, ad companies or commercial companies and that kind of stuff. So because of this, they are making money double. They are actually making money first by collecting our data and then selling these big data to advertising companies. And then those advertising companies create ads and then sell it back to us. So they are making money two ways. They're making money from first showing us the ad and then also taking the information from us to know which ads to show us. And that's like great. No wonder, Mark Zuckerberg is pretty rich right now, right? I mean, think about this. But ultimately, this is not for our well-being. There's a great way to use social media. There's a bad way. So, Poujix, how can we still find some time to reflect despite all these distractions?
I mean, you're absolutely right, both of you, and I agree with pretty much everything you both said. And as you mentioned, I have nothing against social media. They can be very useful, very informative, very helpful. But you are right. Similar to a match that you lit a candle with, that you light fire in winter so it keeps you warm, you can also light the house on fire. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It means that there's a right way to use it and there's a wrong way to use it.
Precisely.
So it's effectively a tool. And like similar to what Ali mentioned, if you're in a coffee shop, say you're in a Starbucks and you're waiting in line, well, I know there's an app feature that you can skip the line. Let's say you're not using that and you're waiting for your order. This is what I do, what I'm guilty of as well. Like a lot of us, I whip out my phone and start looking and stuff. That could be one of the times that you can actually not whip out your phone and start deflecting. Although it's a minute or two, it's something. And you can also dedicate times. It doesn't have to be every day. That's really up to you based on what you feel is necessary.
Oh, let me just jump in for a second,
okay.
Poujix. You mentioned that if you're in a line waiting to reflect, I personally do not recommend our listeners to reflect when they're in public, because especially if you're like in a large city, this actually puts you at a huge disadvantage. I mean, dude, they can actually friggin', they could pickpocket you or something. They could, it's not very well. I don't recommend reflection to be done when you're in public, because I recommend awareness in public for both men and women. It's a lot more efficient, because if you get robbed, then you probably will lose all that focus as well, and like you have problems. So generally speaking, I prefer to reflect when I'm actually alone, because that's the highest quality reflection, because that's also not interrupted. I mean, I also sometimes like to actually literally like put my phone on like airplane mode and stuff when I'm like reflecting or writing diaries and journals, that kind of stuff. This really allows you to think nonstop, because let's say you're, for example, trying to reflect on how life has passed as you're waiting in this huge line, let's say in Starbucks. And then as you're thinking, somehow this, attractive, member of the opposite gender just happens to stop by, and you look at a boom, everything, you're just distracted. Look, let's go talk to this girl right now. So I generally prefer to be aware in public and think and reflect when I'm alone, actually.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good point. And so I'll go to the second part of my talk, and that would be, okay, that say you need to, again, this depends on every individual, might be different, but then let's say you want to dedicate like a few minutes of every day, or half an hour or an hour or 2 hours, whatever, of every week. Set aside that time, like you set aside time for your, for your everything else, for your watching TV, for your calling your friends or whatever. Set that time aside. Like, book it off your calendar right now, like on a weekly basis, and then just do that. And
that's great.
When somebody tells you, okay, do you want to go watch a movie? Be like, no, I have to do something. Like you say, I have to reflect, but even if you're not comfortable saying I have to reflect, so you don't have to explain it to everybody.
I mean, it's like, don't reflect, dude. What's wrong, man? Are you depressed? Somebody drop down. Come here. Let's talk to me. So just don't tell them you're going to reflect. They think you're fucking crazy or like you're depressed. Just say, I got something to do. I got a project to work on.
No, but that's true. But at the same time, let's talk about that, because there's such a stigma against, being like spending some time alone with yourself and, reflecting or writing in a diary. Like, everybody assumes that you're like sick or
exactly
psychotic.
Exactly.
But it's not really. It's a healthy habit.
Unfortunately, it is healthy, but it's not common thanks to distractions around us. And since we're living in a world filled with a lot of dumb people who just don't know how to spend their time, then if something is popular and you're not, let's say, among the masses, of course, you'll be stigmatized. And this is not just about reflection. It's about a lot of other activities. So, Ali, what do you think? What could be done to enhance this process and to actually find the time and the opportunity to reflect on a regular basis?
Just sort of have like a separate time, like you can put something maybe in your calendar or something where, like every day I'm going to be doing this, at this time. And you can make that into a habit, right? So, like they say that if you do something at the same time every day, it sort of becomes into sort of like a routine.
Exactly.
So this way you would always find a way to actually do it. And I think that's one of the good ways. And also I want to touch on, like, for example, if you're waiting in the line, so I think one of the things we should think about, okay, so for example, if you don't pull out your phone and, start browsing, so the question becomes, what do you do? Right?
Exactly.
So it's like, what did people do back in the day, right? Like this, like the smartphones, iPhone came out 2007.
Wow. Let's go back 10 years or something before iPhone was invented.
Yeah.
Like, to go back to 2005, 2004.
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, it's kind of hard to like find, for me, it's kind of hard to like see, like what did people do before, but yeah, at the same time, I guess you guys can help me out there.
So I'm going to tell you about what I would have done in these situations myself, because I tend to travel a lot, especially internationally. As you know, that's a little bit, you have a lot of time to kill in that case. If you travel a lot internationally, just, especially if you have like a transit flight. Oh my goodness, I hate those. I get away like for 4 hours in the airport or something. So generally, I have like few main strategies that I use. My first and most favorite of all, of course, because I told you I don't like to reflect so much when I'm in public, because I like to be aware for everything, for all reasons, not to lose something, not to perhaps have some problems. So I just generally like to be aware. I don't like reflection. What I do love instead is to perhaps listen to audiobooks or podcasts, especially audiobooks. I love them very much. So when I'm in public, my eyes can actually scan the environment to be aware of the surrounding, of all the people around me who are approaching, who are not, while my ears actually listen to this audiobook. That's one of my things that I do a lot, especially when I'm traveling. The other one, of course, is just talking to random people, because as you know me, I love to actually be a little bit talkative, sometimes a little bit too much. And because of this, I literally look around for people who are sitting by themselves, and I just go talk to them. And ironically, in most cases, I'm well received, because this is not a common habit these days. I mean, like, the only competitors that I have are like the old man, literally. Have you seen old people? They never sit alone. Like, I was, not long ago, I was in KFC. This old man came next to me. Sure, you're here. Like, yeah, of course. Good. What's your name? So old people have this habit of just talking to everyone, right? Because they literally grew up in a time where there were no such thing as internet in their pockets or smartphones. So they were a lot more social. So that's what I do myself. I emulate grandpa, and I just start talking to strangers. I know it's very weird in the modern world, because we're just used to just talk to our friends on messenger apps and like Instagram, but I actually start talking to random strangers, and that really gives me a great feeling. I love it, actually. And of course, a combination of reading. If I'm listening on an airplane, so I tend to read a lot, or listen to audiobooks, podcasts, and of course, communications. That's a lot better for me personally than just, I don't know, going through my browser and just starting stuff. Occasionally, of course, you have to text and call. That's just part of the job. But generally, I want to stay away from that as much as possible. So Poujix, how about yourself when you have this, let's say, long flight, or like you got to wait for a long time? How do you just fill up that time and kill that time?
Yeah, in long for so sorry, I'm a commuter, and I commute a lot throughout the city. So a lot of times I do similar things, like reading a book, or catching up with the news, or listening to audiobooks, as well as sometimes, depending on the situation and circumstance, sometimes actually doing work. Like once I finished, that was my most efficient commute probably ever.
Wow!
And that was once I finished an entire assignment on a combination of a couple of commutes,
wow,
which was amazing. So yeah, I tried to, and I very famously bragged about it on social media. And I was like, oh, this
pretty
is
cool,
awesome.
man. Very nice.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's again, I'm still guilty of doing those quote unquote guilty pleasures of just sometimes browsing, and that's fine as long as it's maintained, and it's sometimes, not most times or all the times.
Exactly. Very well. And Ali, how about yourself? How do you let's say you're traveling, you're commuting a lot, and you got to be at the airport or something. What do you do at that time?
So for me, I guess last time I traveled was Los Angeles. And what I did was
Buddy, it was not Los Angeles. It was Vegas, baby. And you were having a good time. All right.
Hey, man, I thought that was a secret, man.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We got it. No problem.
Hey, my parents are listening, so you gotta tone it down.
That's right. Very well.
So last time when I went to Los Angeles, not Las Vegas.
This is to the parents of Ali Mahdi right now. I made a mistake. This was not Las Vegas. This was in my dreams. Yeah. He actually went to Los Angeles. That's right. Nothing else happened.
No drugs, for sure. For me, I guess it was just mostly like listening to music. For me, I'm not really picky in terms of like listening to podcasts or things like that. Most of the times I do listen to music, I don't know. For me, it's mostly the music that actually helps me, kill time.
Very good, very good. What kind of music, I'm curious? I know your parents are listening, but kind of what? Isn't that heavy metal or something?
No. It's a combination. So if I'm coding, it's more like just music background. But for example, if I'm doing something sort of like email or things like that, it'll be more like pop or like hip hop.
Interesting. Very nice. So with that being said, now the actual question that we asked at the beginning of the show was how to actually enjoy your time alone, because this is a skill that we're not taught. We are simply not taught to enjoy spending time alone, especially for those of us extroverts who perhaps we need to be with people. So we don't really learn. I think the introverts somehow learn gradually how to spend time alone and enjoy it. But for most of us, we just cannot learn how to spend time alone and actually enjoy it. So, Poujix, what are some of your tips to actually help the listeners enjoy spending some time alone and reflecting?
I mean, one of the things that I do, because it happens often, again, like commutes or whatever, I have a plan ahead. So whenever I have a time, first of all, some of the times alone you can anticipate, like commutes, like you're alone on a subway or whatever, and then you have to think of something to do. Some of them you might not be able to necessarily anticipate that it's going to happen, but you can have a set of things, like you can literally have a list of things that are not maybe super priority, but at the same time can be done on an occasion that you get a time off somehow. So you can whip out that list and see, okay, I can probably do this. No, probably I can't do that in here because, as you mentioned, for example, I have to pay attention to my environment or something, whatever. So plan ahead for those occasions. And when you know ahead of the time there are things that you can do, you're less distracted with things that don't matter or don't produce any good results. So that would be my one good, I think, advice that I could.
Very well said.
And I actually got a version of it from somebody.
All right, very good. So copyrighted. That's right. And Ali, what do you think?
Yeah. I guess my best advice would be not to listen to other advices. It's okay. So the reason why I'm saying that is the alone time is really personalized.
Wow.
It's like whatever works for you. Like you don't if for example, if you're trying to like relax and you're not so for me, I guess one of the things I really enjoy sometimes, if I really want to just like relax, one
of the things that he really enjoys is defy me.
I like it. I like the approach he takes. Actually, I like it a lot.
I'm just saying,
my advice for all of our listeners. Here is my advice. Do not listen to his fucking advice. That is my advice.
So it's like a list of things you should do. One is, you should not look at this list. So that'd be one of it. But yeah, look, it's, being alone is really personal. And I think it works differently for everyone. But at the same time, if you're having struggle, being productive when being alone, then yeah, for sure you could, you can listen to other people. But at the same time, if you just want to have fun or just be you, then you don't need any advice. It's just, just be yourself. I don't know.
Exactly. And like I mentioned earlier, people become great when they're alone, not when they're in public. So guys, you need to actually take care of this time, and you have to understand that character, mental strength, and knowledge and wisdom is developed when you are reflecting on and processing the information that you have received. When you're out there talking to people, you're just reacting and you're just basically responding on your current level of programming. And if you want to change that, then you need to take the time off to process the information that you got from the environment. Because in NLP, we say there's no such thing as failure. There is only feedback. So you're always receiving feedback. Maybe you drove a little bit too fast and you had an accident. Maybe perhaps there's something wrong and you somehow hurt your partner. Whatever it is, you want to get the feedback, but then you got to process that feedback. And that's when you spend time alone, reflecting and thinking. So please take this seriously. If you want to grow, if you are serious about personal development, then you need to spend time alone and to reflect and to think. That's very, very important. So that's, of course, all the time we have. We're running out of time here. So let's go for wrapping up the show. Poujix, after all that we talked today, what is now your final comment?
Ultimately, I have to, in a general sense, I agree with Ali that the whole thing is very personalized. So it's really up to you that what you want to do. Just be aware that you're doing something with your pastime, with your alone time, and that thing can define you basically. And then whatever you do, then that's really up to you. That's true. That's what I like to do. That could be an example to give you ideas, but ultimately take your pick. But again, it's just about the awareness that, as you mentioned, in our alone time, we're basically shaping ourselves. So I guess it's super important that what we're doing should be what we want to be.
Fantastic. And Ali, what is your final comment?
Yeah. So just to summarize, we live in a society right now where there's a lot of distraction. There's economy called the distraction economy,
exactly,
which is like Facebook and Instagram. So you just need to be able to realize how much time you're spending on those. And even when you're on your own, how much time are you spending on those, for example, so just be aware of the time you spend on these things, and at the same time, being alone is natural. So for example, we talked about this a little bit, like in the society, when you say, hey, I just want to be on my own, people would be like, oh, you're crazy.
Exactly.
Or some people might say, oh, maybe he's sad, or I don't know, like maybe he's depressed. But that's not true, right? Like there's a lot of people who just want to have alone time. So yeah, so the only advice is, don't listen to other advice.
I like that one very well. And with that, we're coming to the end of the show. So guys, first of all, I want to thank you, Poujix and Ali, for being here again, for sharing your ideas. Truly appreciate it. It was quite productive. Thank you very much with both of you. And of course, to our listeners out there, do you see those stars, like those stars that you see right now on the app that you're listening to us right now? Could you please take a friggin' few seconds and just press on those stars? And while you're at it, please press on the 5 stars. It's going to be the best. And then rate our show, because that's going to help us to actually reach a wider audience. And of course, this is all the time we have for. My name is Daniel Mulligan, and this was Beyond the Present Podcast. Thank you very much, and thank you for tuning in. See you guys next week. Bye for now.